Welcome to this session on employment provider certification. This is the third webinar in a series put on by the National Center on Self-Employment, Business Ownership, and Telecommuting, which is funded through the Rehab Services Administration, and its project to assist vocational rehabilitation counselors with self-employment and to provide training both at in-service and at a pre-service level. My name's Janet Steveley. I'm with Griffin Hammis Associates, and this is an area that's particularly interesting to me. I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of self-employment projects, some with state IDD systems, with what's called the Entrepreneurship Bootcamp for Veterans with Disabilities. And more recently, I've served as the lead instructor for the Texas Certified Benefits Technical Assistance Consultant Program, which we'll be talking about later today. I've also been a small business owner for 24 years, so it's a topic that really interests me, and I'm excited to talk to you about today. Our learning objectives for these sessions are first to provide a rationale for training and certifying providers to support VR customers through the business planning process. Also to describe the Certified Business Technical Assistance Consultant, or what I'll call the CBTAC model used in both Florida and Texas, and to discuss strategies and resources to support not only providers, but vocational rehabilitation counselors too, with the self-employment implementation. I'd like to, as we get started, provide some special recognition to folks who work in the states of Texas and Florida who have been really instrumental in getting the certification going. Those folks are Sue Ellen Woodleaf and Aisa Salazar with the Texas Workforce Commission, and Jan Pierce in the Florida Vocational Rehabilitation. And I know if we have some state folks that are listening today, they might be really good people to connect with or to get information from regarding state level issues with implementing self-employment. So just to get us started, I wanted to get people thinking about how the idea of self-employment comes up, because you've got people kind of coming to the table differently, right? You might have some VR customers who express interest in self-employment, but have no specific business concept. They might just be thinking that self-employment would be a good fit for them because it might match their conditions of employment better. Maybe they live in very rural areas or lack transportation, or have scheduling difficulties, maybe due to medical appointments or things like that, that they just think self-employment might be a good idea, but again, no specific business concept. You may have other customers that come to you that do have a specific business idea in mind that seems to match them and in what their skills and interests are, but you have no idea if that business idea is feasible or not. And then you might have a third group of customers that come that are pretty much on their way, right? They have a good business idea, they've done some research, they may even have a business plan drafted or completed. And it's pretty easy to pick up on those folks, right? The people in category 3 here. But what we need to remember is that we really need to support all of those people, right? People come, just like in wage employment, not everybody comes with a job, right? Some people come in not even knowing what they want to do yet. And it's our role to support them in kind of figuring out what their job might be, and provide job development services and get people into wage employment. If you think about that on the self-employment side, it needs to look the same, that we really need to be in a role where we're helping people identify a business concept that's feasible and conduct that market research so that we know that it's feasible, and then move on with business planning. But when you think about it, many vocational rehabilitation counselors might have little to no experience with self-employment. They may not have been self-employed in the past themselves, and they may have had limited opportunities to assist customers with self-employment. And let's face it, especially if you're new to this, the self-employment process might seem complicated, or there might be a lack of understanding about the process. We also know that there's often much more time involved, and counselors have big caseloads. So it's really hard to think about spending that much time with one particular customer. So it can really help to certify providers who can specialize in that, who can really learn your state's VR policy and process around self-employment, and be able to dig in and work alongside customers in developing their business concept and going through feasibility and developing that business plan. Think about this. 6.1% of people without disabilities are self-employed, of working age population, whereas 10.3% of people with a disability are self-employed. And I guess that was kind of an eye-opener to me, that there are more people with disabilities that are self-employed, or a higher percentage than the general population. Yet only 1.7 of VR cases that are closed successfully are in self-employment. So there seems to be kind of a gap there, that self-employment seems to be something that is working for people with disabilities, yet we have very few closures around self-employment. So the background on the Certified Business Technical Assistance Consultant Program, or CPTAC program, is that there were a couple of states that were really recognizing that gap and also the potential for self-employment. In both states are large states, Florida and Texas. They both have very rural areas. And both of them started by training providers, right? And us at Griffin-Hammis were assisting with that. We were training large number of providers initially in different regions, so that we're getting people trained across the state. But we really noticed pretty quickly that training was not enough, that there really needed to be a shift in policy and the process and the implementation. It's just like with anything, training provides a good base, but we really have to support people through the whole process. So we've created a certification program that not only provides training, but is paired with additional support. And it's looked a little different in the two different states. In Florida, they did a lot of quarterly networking meetings. In both states, they've had the opportunity for on-site technical assistance and other opportunities for continued learning and support. So where we are now with that, fast forwarding like 10 or 15 years, is that we've developed what we call the CPTAC certification course. It looked a little different in past years. It was live for a while, then it went online, and now just a few years ago, we've revamped it again. It's now a 12-week course that's divided into 6 2-week modules. Each module consists of 3 to 5 lessons, and it's in a very interactive platform. So each students who are participating within each 2-week module, they review the materials, they complete an assignment, and participate in a discussion board with other students, pretty similar to some online classes you've probably taken. And then there's a quiz at the end of each module and a final exam at the end of the course. And they need to score 80% or better on both the quizzes and the final exam. This is the large overview of the curriculum content for the CPTAC certification. So you can see Module 1 is kind of more an overview of customized self-employment. Module 2 focuses on business concept development and feasibility studies. Module 3 is focusing on marketing, operations, and sales. Module 4 deals with business financials, everybody's favorite, right? Module 5 is around self-employment and Social Security benefits. And then Module 6 focuses on business plan development. I'm going to get out of the PowerPoint now and show you what this really looks like inside of the platform we use that is called CourseArc. And here. So CourseArc is the software that we develop the curriculum in, and CourseArc gets embedded into Moodle. Moodle is the learning management system. So participants actually access it through Moodle, and I'm sure lots of you are familiar with Moodle from other courses. But this is the outline of the course. It starts with an introduction to CourseArc and an orientation, and these are really just for helping people figure out how to navigate within those two systems. But then you'll see it lists, Module 1, Lesson 1, Module 1, Lesson 2, Module 1, Lesson 3. So for Module 1, it provides an overview of customized employment and a session on discovering personal genius, which is Griffin Hammas's version of Discovery. So we're in this initial module, we're focusing on how you get to self-employment, how that might fit people's interest and conditions of employment. And then most of the lessons are fairly generic in terms of, applicable to all states. But the last lesson in most of the modules deals with state-specific information. So for instance, Module 1, Lesson 3 is an overview of the Texas RSD Self-Employment and Supported Self-Employment Program and Policy. So people are getting some kind of generic information, but they're also getting very specific state information. I'm going to flip, before we go through the rest of this, I'm going to flip into Module 1, Lesson 1 for a minute, just to show you what CourseArc looks like. So each lesson has a similar structure. There's an introduction and overview. The introductions provide a short video introducing them to the lesson. The overview page provides both the learning objectives for that lesson and kind of a breakdown of the pages and the assignments and how much time is involved. So for instance, if I scroll to the bottom of this overview page, I can see that this particular lesson is 46 minutes. So it gives people an idea of the time involved and what they're going to be looking at. On the left-hand side, there's a navigation page to show you which page you're on, and you can quickly click to the next page. And as you can see, I just want to give you an idea of some of the interactive activities that are available in this format. Like for instance, we're starting this page with a quick survey on how many people have people helped with starting a small business, if people have been self-employed themselves. So it allows you to poll participants. I'm going to a next page now, which provides some information to read through. But there's also some information where you click on hotspots to get a little more information. Again, there's a lot of interactive tools like that. On the next page, you'll see there's some flashcards that people can click on. This is just showing like self-employment under different names, right? We might call it micro enterprise or a home-based business or commercial-based business or a business within a business. We can embed videos and audio tracks. We can embed case examples. And in this case, there's a case example that people read through, but with a writing activity. So it gives them some direction to think about what they learned about the case example and then respond in writing below. So there's lots of different activities that can be built in. This particular, on the next page, it's called Self-Employment Isn't That Risky. It's kind of a quiz format, a true or false format that looks at some of the myths or around self-employment. So it's a really fun, interactive kind of tool. I'm going to skip down to a page called the Business Planning Team because it shows some things that are a little different. Oops, that's not the one I wanted. That's this one, I think. You can see that there might be some flashcards and things to flip, but also some exercises where people might categorize certain information. So there's lots of different tools we can build into CourseArc, as well as visuals to make it more interesting. CourseArc is also very, very committed to accessibility, and it's one of the reasons we chose this format. So that's been a really good thing and something we're always working on. Each lesson too ends with a check for understanding, which is a short quiz This is different from the end of the module quiz, but it's again just helping people digest the information and make sure that they're getting some feedback. And then it ends with a summary page that basically just reviews what they've learned and kind of leads into the next session. So that's what the lessons look like. I'm going to go back to the outline now. Um, we talked about lesson module 1 being around kind of the introduction to customized self-employment. In module 2, we start to get into business concept development, market research and feasibility. And again, the last lesson is that state-specific information. I will say too, each module has an assignment, and we've used a case study that people work on from module to module. So in module 1, maybe the case study person is Bridget, and in module 1, maybe people are looking at how Bridget's skills and conditions of employment match with self-employment, if that might be a good fit for her. In module 2, when we're talking about market research and feasibility studies, the assignment is actually to go out and talk to people in the same field that Bridget is in to try to get information on customers and competition and business capability, which are some of the things we're teaching in module 2. So people are required to go out and talk to people in their communities, which is a really fun thing, and then share what they learn on the discussion board. Module 3 gets into marketing, promotion and sales, and small business operations. In this module, the activity is to actually identify what are the tasks involved in production and what are the tasks involved in business management. And by identifying those tasks and looking at where Bridget might need support or training or accommodations, it helps us identify both what she needs to be successful, but also costs that might be involved. That's going to be important as we move into lesson 4 on business financials, or module 4, I should say. Module 4 begins with an overview of business financials. It also covers some information on small business funding and financing. So some states actually require that, that people have access to funds other than VR funds. So, and oftentimes people just need more for startups. So looking at what some of those other options are, whether they be loans or using past plans or other kinds of things. We also, in lesson 4, provide some spreadsheets for people to work from. And these are, there's, sort of typical financial planning tools like profit and loss and cash flow. But the thing that's unique about these spreadsheets is that they also help people who receive Social Security benefits to connect their business income with how that's going to impact their benefits and how it's going to impact their overall income. And I'll show these to you in a bit. But it's been a really good opportunity to teach people about financial projections, but to use those spreadsheets and teach them how. We also get into state policy. If there's a particular policy around the financials, like for instance, Texas does require that they use this particular spreadsheet. I'm going to show you. Lesson 5 gets into Social Security benefits and how self-employment income is going to impact Social Security benefits. We highly recommend that people get a CWIC, a Certified Work Incentive Coordinator, also called benefits planners, on their team. We know that CB tax well, we're giving them some training in this. That training is going to be limited. They're not expected to know everything, but how to work in coordination with their CWIC to help people along this process. They are given some basic information on how self-employment earnings are going to impact both SSDI and SSI if the folks that they're working with them are receiving those benefits. There's also a lesson on PASS in self-employment. PASS stands for Plan to Achieve Self-Support. It's one of the Social Security work incentives that can help people set aside income or resources to use for a vocational goal. And we found it to be a very, very effective resources for helping with business startup. It doesn't work for everybody. It does require an application. Um, but what we're focusing really on this is who is a good candidate. So if CPTACs are working with somebody, they can kind of quickly figure out if they're a good candidate or not, and then know to be working with the CWIC on how to make that happen. The last lesson in Module 5 focuses on tracking benefits on the financial spreadsheet. Because remember, I told you the spreadsheet does that too. It helps people track what's going to happen with their Social Security benefits. So we kind of pull that back in. Let's see, Module 6, the culminating module, is on business planning. And again, we really want to teach people that you don't start with the business plan. You start with the business concept development and go work into business feasibility. And then if you can demonstrate through some test marketing and through that business feasibility process that the business can be feasible, then you move into business planning. And by this time, you've collected a lot of the information that is going to go into the business plan. So it's kind of more formalizing and finalizing, and getting that additional, filling in the holes. We also cover, some templates for business plans, but often states have a particular format that they use or that they want people to use. So again, it's ending with that state-specific information. Throughout the whole course, we do try to bring in some case studies. In fact, there's 3 people that we focus on through all of the modules. 2 of those individuals are more supported self-employment candidates. One person you may have met during the introductory webinar, who is M with M's Coffee Shop in Iowa. We have another gentleman named Stephen who runs Stephen's Wood Shop in Ohio. And we have a third person that we're following through the course, whose name is Jerry, who runs an electric bike shop in Ashland, Oregon. So, it's helpful to kind of see how different information applies to each of those 3 individuals, who are all very different, of course. I'm going to flip now, and I want to show you the financial spreadsheet that I talked about that we are teaching in Module 4. But this is a tool that's been really, really super helpful. And it probably looks really confusing at first, but know that we walk people through this through the course. And let me just orient you first. There's 4 tabs down at the bottom here. One's for Social Security information. One's for startup and funding information. There's the projections tab where you're projecting, income and expenses. And then there's the closure analysis. And the cool thing about these spreadsheets is that you don't have to enter a lot of information, and that information self-populates into the other pages so that you have some really good information collected in one place. So I'm going to start with the projections tab because that's typically where a CPTAC or somebody helping somebody with self-employment would start. As they're going through business feasibility, one of the things we want to demonstrate is whether the business can be profitable. So we start by doing some projections of what people's income and expenses are. This is actually the spreadsheet we used from one of the assignments in the course. It's focusing on Bridget's piano services. So you can see here, she's got some different products and services she's providing, including performances at an assisted living facility. She's selling some CDs, and in year 2, she's going to go to something called CD Baby, a digital production, and that she's also providing some piano lessons. So we can estimate based on how much time Bridget wants to work, and thinking about sort of she wanted to start slowly and kind of build up. So we can make some estimations on both her income as well as her expenses, what she's going to be putting out for various business-related expenses. And what that brings us to is the net profit. And that's something that as VR counselors who might be working with a provider, that one thing you're going to be very concerned with is what is the net profit? What is the projected net profit of the business? And you're concerned about that for a couple of different reasons. First, you'll see here that Bridget's net profit is projected for a little over $11,000 in year one and closer to $18,000 in year two. And the question is always, is like, well, is that enough? So, well, it depends. It depends, one thing, on what Bridget's financial needs and expectations are. But the other thing you want to be looking at is what is your state's criteria for successful closure? And does that meet that? And this, of course, has, you have to think about how many hours the person is working too. So net profit is something that as VR counselors, you need to be looking at and monitoring. Now, this document, the projections page, actually has several different documents in the projections. The cool thing is I only have to enter information here, and it self-populates into the other documents. So the other document that we teach is the cash flow. And again, these are still projections. We're thinking ahead about this, but these are tools too that people do after the fact, right? Then it would be a cash flow statement, but right now it's a projection. And this tool is looking at the business account and what's the ending cash at in the business account each month. So there's two things in particular we want to look at here. First, we want to make sure that these are all positive numbers, because this works like your checkbook register, right? And just like in your checkbook register, you don't want to see it in the red. So we want to make sure that people have enough money to pay their bills. And if negative numbers do come up here and while you're doing your projections, there's some things we could look at doing. Maybe the person takes a smaller owner's draw initially. Maybe there's ways to increase income or decrease expenses, or maybe there's ways to get additional resources that might help. So if I do my projections and I come out with negative numbers here, it just tells me I need to go back and look at what's happening and see if there's some things we can do. Now, if they're big negative numbers and we've tried doing things, that tells us something else, right? That maybe we're not on the right track. But so we want to see here two things: positive cash flow, which I can see here for her, and also what I'm seeing is that her ending cash is increasing over time. So she's building up equity in the business, which is important to know because, there might be a rainy day, right? There might be, maybe she gets sick, maybe there's a global pandemic, who knows? But also, it might be just because in the future she might need to purchase different things. Maybe she needs a new keyboard, or maybe she needs new sound equipment or things like that. So you can see that she's building equity in the business over time. The break-even analysis, and this is automatically calculated. It just the break-even sales is just the point where the business is earning enough to cover the sales. She has very low monthly expenses, so it's very easy to show that. Then these last two sections really focus on things that are more specific to people with disabilities receiving Social Security benefits. And it's the personal living sections and the benefits analysis section. So in the personal living, it is kind of helping people see what their overall income is, including benefits they might receive, plus whatever they're drawing from the business, their owner's draw, as well as personal expenses that go in here to come up with an amount that's, that is their discretionary income. Now, if I'm working with somebody, I could add their living expenses in here to get a more accurate calculation here. The benefits analysis, and I don't want to get into the weeds about benefits here, but I think a lot of you are kind of familiar with SSI and SSDI and how that works. And just know that one of the things that the spreadsheet can do is kind of track when people are using trial work periods, when they move into their extended period of disability, if their benefits are going to cease. You know, we have what's called the month of cessation, the grace period. I can also see here, if I look on line 97 up in the personal living section, you'll see here on line 97 that this person is receiving $620 in Social Security disability insurance. And in year 2, that goes up a little due to the cost of living adjustments, but it will calculate for me based on her earned income through her business when those benefits might stop. And in her case, you'll see starting in October, she no longer is receiving Social Security disability. She does, however, start receiving a small SSI check because her income's high enough to stop her SSDI, but it's not high enough to completely prevent her from getting SSI. So, and the cool thing is you don't have to do anything. The spreadsheet calculates it for you. All we have to do is on the Social Security info tab is fill in some basic information about when the business is starting and the federal minimum wage. There's a section on SSI that just asks for the federal benefit rate, which is the maximum someone can receive an SSI in the current year, and some information about Medicaid, whether they're Medicaid eligible, and that state threshold amount, as well as if people have an individual threshold. There's also a section on SSDI where we need to include both the trial work period amount, the SGA amount, and that person's benefit amount. And also if they've used any trial work periods, or if they're already in their extended period of eligibility, or if they've ceased. Now, this might sound like you don't know what I'm talking about. That's okay. That's what the CB tax will go to their benefits planners or CWICs to help with that information. There is also a section in here on PASS. So if people are using PASS, I could enter that in. Let's see, it just asked me, for the current year's SSI federal benefit rate. It asked me when I'd like the PASS to begin. I'm just gonna, whoops, I'll say January. And again, this requires an application. I think we're calling 2021 year one. Something, if you're using PASS, the Social Security policy on this is that they will minimally fund a PASS for 18 months. It could go longer than that, but I'm just going to put in 18 months for here. And if I do that, I can go back to the projections page, and it will show me on line 130 of the spreadsheet how many months that the PASS is in effect. It actually, what that does is give her not only her SSDI, but it gives her a full SSI check of $794 a month that she could use for what things that are approved in the PASS plan, but the things that could help her with getting her business going. So in the course, what we look at is kind of the general startup stuff, but then we also show how if, say, Bridget needed a new automobile, which is something that VR can't pay for, that she might use PASS to fund that part of her need. So that's the SSA info tab. Startup and funding kind of helps people lay out what their startup expenses are and who might be paying for it. You can see in this example that there's several things listed that she needs, about 20 different things. Some of them are courses that she already took and paid for. So there's sections to put in the amount of the cost of each startup expense, and then a drop-down menu that allows you to identify who's covering it, whether it's the customer and family, or Voc Rehab, or PASS, or some other source. And so you can see Bridget had kind of paid for a series of classes over the year prior to starting, and she can use the spreadsheet to say, okay, VR, this is what I'm requesting from you, what I think I still need. Now, some states do require that there's another source of funding. So this is a way you can help show that. You can help show customer contribution. Let's face it, it's good for people to have some skin in the game. So that's a good thing. And it also kind of gives you some totals on what you might be looking to fund through VR. The last page I wanted to show you, or the last tab, is the closure analysis. And again, there's nothing that needs to be entered here. The numbers are all being pulled from what was entered in the projection spreadsheet. But for example, this is very specific to Texas now, and Texas's closure criteria. And Texas has, as part of their criteria, both stability and closure criteria for both wages, the amount of earnings that the person has, and for operating cash that's in the business account. So they want to make sure that people are earning at least minimum wage, given the number of hours they're putting in, and that they have enough operating cash in their business account to cover at least 3 months of expenses should they need to, right? So you can see here that the spreadsheet calculates that for you, that she meets the closure criteria for operating cash in June, and she meets the closure criteria for wages in September. So by September of year one, she's met those two criteria. Texas actually has some other criteria that come in there about, amount of support and VR's, provided all their services. But this is kind of two of the basic things that they look at. So that's the financial spreadsheet. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. And just to say that certification is the first part of this, training and certification. But CBTACs are also required to maintain their certification over time. So if they get certified, let's say in 2021, their certification is good till the end of 2022, but there's an annual recertification process after that. And they access that through a portal. And in the portal, they can get copies of their certificates and, check their expiration dates, but also all the recertification courses are built into the portal. They're required to take 5 credits annually, which is usually like 5 courses that are 1 to 1.5 hours in length. We're doing now a combination of online courses in CourseArc, like you saw, and some live webinars. And I think the live webinars have been really helpful, both in getting people started on their recertification promptly, but also as a good opportunity to network with other CBTACs and to ask questions. So that's been really good. There is a quiz required for each of the recertification courses. And the topics are really just derived from feedback that we get from the field. This year I know we had people say, I could use more on business financials. I'd like more information on past. So we kind of use that to develop the recertification courses. But there's also additional support available to CBTACs. First of all, in Texas and I believe in Florida as well, there are state and regional program specialists who are available to help as they go. Some people are fairly new at this. Most of the providers we get aren't coming with a lot of experience in business planning. They're coming with a lot of experience in helping people with wage employment, and they're learning the self-employment piece. So having people in state that can help support them is really important. We also really recommend people partner with their small business development centers or other business resources in their state, which is different. It's not just referring customers to the SBDC, but it's connecting customers with a provider that they can then go together to the SBDC, who will guide them through the process. But the CBTAC is really the person working one-on-one with the customer to implement the recommendations. There's also individual one-on-one consultation that's built into contracts where Griffin Hammer staff can work with CBTACs one-on-one. We also have in Texas, the CPTAC course is training providers, but also voc rehab counselors. So we're training people together so that people are hearing the same information and really know how to work together. In fact, I had a CPTAC, a provider CPTAC, call me the other day, and he said, in my office, we don't have anybody trained. It would be so nice if we had a voc rehab counselor that's trained in this too, where we can really work on this together. And so we're doing some outreach to try to bring in somebody from that particular community. But there are some counselors that, as you can imagine, there's a lot of ER counselors in Texas. So not all of them have been through the CBTAC training. So we're trying to do some tools for them as well, and some webinars on various topics. Like we're doing these desktop reference guides, which are kind of quick 1 to 2 page handouts on specific topics. Like here's a quick one on what are some financial tracking tools you might help somebody with, or how might you coordinate with Ticket to Work for long-term support, or just some quick reference guides like that. We're also going to be starting some webinars, and in Texas, we're looking at beginning a community of practice. I know in Florida, they've done quarterly networking meetings that kind of serve that same purpose to help provide additional information and support to CBTACs over time. I just last week, I was working with one CBTAC in Texas. Her name's Ashley Nichols with Imagine Enterprises. And she just had some really good things that she had to say. And she's right now working with 7 different people on self-employment. So it's really, what she's doing is really, really impressive. And she just wanted, I asked her about things that I might share with you all today. And one thing she wanted to share is just really how rewarding it's been to help, help customers turn their dreams into reality. And that, having a disability should not disqualify somebody from owning their own business, that with the right supports, that really anything's possible. I also asked her about some tips she might have for you all. And one thing she said that has been most beneficial to her was the continuing education and one-on-one help. Like right now, she's in the throes of working through financials with some people, and she just needs some help, right? So it's been good to brainstorm back and forth. And another really good point she made is she went through the CBTAC certification program, but it was quite some time before she got her first referral. And it's something y'all might want to think about, is that if people are learning something, they need to practice it right away, right? But in her case, there was a delay. And so that one-on-one help and the continuing education courses were really, really important. And the other tip she had, and I think this is important for VR counselors too, VR counselors or providers who are working with people around self-employment, is that in that initial meeting or early in the business planning phase or working with this customer, that there should be a really good discussion about kind of timelines for self-employment and what to expect and what people's roles are, so that everybody's on the same page. Some people, maybe they have like really immediate needs for income, and they need to realize that self-employment sometimes isn't a quick process, that if they have immediate needs for income, they might need a wage job to carry them over while they're thinking about their business. So I thought those were some lovely tips to share. And in summary, when we're thinking about certifying providers or training providers around self-employment, providing self-employment services, just realize that they're not the only ones that need the training and support. I mean, we need to support everyone. We need to support the prospective business owner. We need to support the providers, and we need support for VR counselors too, so that we can really make this successful and a positive experience for everyone. And we also know that states need to support that whole self-employment implementation process. It might be through policy, through training, through technical assistance, and just those continued opportunities for learning. It takes a village kind of thing. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining today. And if you do have any questions, feel free to email me. My name again is Janet Steveley. And my email is jsteveley, it's JSTEVELEY @griffinhammis.com. So thank you again, and good luck with your ventures in self-employment.